you want to start with Chase and just what do you think about the signing and what it does for the defense?
Yeah. Look, I think he was a guy that we were looking at that, look, I don't know that I really knew that he was going to be available. And then we quickly found out that, he was going to be available and he was going to be in a range that we felt like, we could get to. I think he's extremely talented. I think he's extremely motivated. We had a great visit with him. Had dinner with him the night before, then brought him over, obviously did all the medical. And I just think he's going to be a really good asset, for our defense.
Dennis, off topic, the Bills hired Ronald Curry to coach under Josh Allen. What was he like to work with, and how did he make his players better?
Yeah, look, he did a great job with our quarterbacks. He also coached the receivers in New Orleans. He's a great worker, extremely smart, competitive. I think, with him and Joe Brady together, I think they'll do a hell of a job.
To be able to face any concerns, when you guys learned of the injury that you feel like?
Yeah, look, obviously, we knew that, he was going to have this surgery. And I think the good thing for all of us involved was everybody that we talked to felt like, look, it's not a matter of if he's going to heal and be fine. It was just a matter of when. And so, I think we're kind of comfortable with the timelines that we have, and yet, it's a human body. It's going to heal at its own rate, but I know he's going to do everything he can to get himself back and get himself ready as quickly as possible.
You did get, your offense with the coaches, Clint, Rico, and Clancy Barone, the Gary Kubiak offense.
Yeah.
What sold you on wanting to go to that, full in on that?
Yeah, look, obviously I think that system of offense, there's certainly a lot of variations of it. They're not all the same, but I think that system is something that I think's done really well in our league and done well in our league for a long period of time. And I think it's something that I think we can incorporate, and I think we have the type of players that fit well in that system. And so, like I said, there's a lot of variations to it. Look, I've known the Kubiak family since, at least the early 90s when I was playing at A&M and Gary coached there. And I remember watching Gary play when I was growing up, as an A&M fan growing up. So I feel like I've kind of known, that family a little bit. And Clint's a guy I've kind of followed his career a little bit and felt like it was a good fit for, what we wanted to do.
Has Pete talked to you about bringing Taysom with them to Denver?
No, that conversation has not been broached. Look, I feel like Sean's tried to get everybody else from the Saints to go to Denver with him. So, we'll see.
Dennis, what is the team gaining in Willie Gay Jr.? What do you like about signing him?
Yeah, look, big, physical, athletic linebacker. Going to bring a ton of energy. Going to be great for the locker room. Obviously I don't know him personally, but Todd Grantham coached him at Mississippi State, and so I feel like we're getting a really big, fast, athletic linebacker and a guy that's going to be really good in our locker room.
Did Janoco share any insight on Peterman behind the scenes? Were there things that he knew from Chicago, just as far as in the meeting room? That was a major benefit.
Yeah. Look, I think anytime you have experience with somebody, it's a benefit to you because you don't really know when you're bringing somebody into your program. You don't really know exactly what you're getting until you actually get a chance to get them in your building and start working with them. And so anytime you have somebody that's got some inside knowledge that's been in the meeting room with somebody, I think that's beneficial. And look, I think there's a connection there with Andrew working with him in Chicago. There's obviously the connection that he was in the quarterback room with Derek, in Vegas, and so I think that's going to benefit us, and I think that's going to be helpful for Derek.
Yeah, when you're comfortable with what Clint's going to bring to the offense, what are you expecting them to bring?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think just from a schematic standpoint, this whole offense is going to be based on, kind of the run, play action game. I mean, obviously, drop back's going to be a part of it, but the main emphasis is going to be able to run the ball effectively, and then be able to create some shot plays in the passing game off the play action. So I think that's something that we can use. I mean, look, with Clint and Rico, John Benton, like these guys have been together before, so I think there's some continuity in terms of getting the program, off the ground and getting started.
With Chase in Washington, like sometimes they felt like maybe his stutter step was like kind of wanted him to be more of a power rusher. Are there things that you look at when like you look at his game that you would like to see him rush a certain way, or that you feel like is maybe placed to his advantage?
Yeah, look, here, when I put the tape on and watched him play, here's what I noticed. I noticed he won one-on-one matchups. And I think that's something that we need to be better at this year. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. You can win with speed, you can win with power, you can win with a counter. There's a lot of ways that you can do that. But, yeah, I just feel like there's a really good athlete there. And I think there's some things that we can help him, be better at. And help him in his career, and there's certainly things that I think he can do that's going to help our defense.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what's interesting. As much focus as there's been on the injuries, it seems like he's still kind of a developing player in terms of just his potential. What do you kind of see there?
Well, look, here's another guy that came in. He was the defensive rookie of the year, and then he basically missed 2 seasons due to injury, and then came back this season. He started off, really kind of on fire there in Washington, and was having a lot of success. Got traded at the trade deadline. I think he was credited with a sack in the Super Bowl, and I think he was involved in the intentional grounding, which in my mind was like 2 sacks in the Super Bowl. So I do think this is still a young developing player, which is exciting for me.
Do you see on film the neck at all bother him, or could you tell that it
Yeah, look,
impacted his game?
I think he would tell you that there were certain things that he didn't feel comfortable being able to do. And again, I think the good thing for us and for him is that, when you visit with the doctors, everybody, feels like once this problem is going to be corrected, and once it's corrected, it won't be any issue.
Would you guys consider bringing Pete back, or does Ollie kind of fill that role that he was in last year?
Yeah, I think all things are on the table in terms of how we want to fill out our roster, and so there's a business aspect that goes along with all of these decisions, and so yeah, we'll see.
With Chase, do you feel like the defensive line room is now settled, or is that maybe still a position you'd look to in the draft?
Well, I think this, and I said this yesterday, I think anytime you affect the quarterback, whether it's offensively by being able to protect the quarterback or being a weapon for the quarterback, defensively being able to rush the quarterback, being able to defend the pass, those are areas that you're always looking to improve. So I don't think you can ever have enough good corners in your building. I don't think you can ever have enough pass rushers in your building.
How do you feel about your receiver depth right now? We know about the 2 guys, obviously, Sheed and Chris. It looks like AT's an emerging guy, and Brian Stanley and Cedric. But how do you feel about your depth in that room?
Yeah, I feel like the addition of in particular Cedric Wilson gives us a little bit of a veteran presence, somebody that's kind of been there, done that. So I thought that was a good piece. I certainly think that's an area, in terms of a pass catcher, not necessarily a wide receiver, but a pass catcher, is something that we're going to continue to look at. And I feel better about our depth now than I did a month ago, but but I think that's still probably a position that we'll look to see if we can't find somebody to add.
When you look at the wide receiver depth, just bringing on Coach Williams, just kind of what is he able to bring to a room that's kind of a little bit younger?
Yeah, look, I'm excited about Doug. I just think, his demeanor is going to be something that we need, in that room. He's going to be tough on them. He's going to be demanding of them, and yet he understands how to relate to them. And so I'm kind of excited about watching that dynamic and see how that plays out. But I think he's going to be good for that room.
When you guys aren't winning the one-on-ones, and this is probably kind of obvious, but how does that handcuff you as far as how you can design defense or things like that? Does it open things up when?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, being able to win one-on-one matchups where everything doesn't have to be scheme related, I think that, it makes it easier to call defenses, design defenses, because you're not having to scheme everything up. You're able to win on some natural ability, rather than having to win with schematics all the time.
And just besides getting healthy, what does Foskey need to do to kind of be ready to?
I think number one, he's got to cut it loose. I think this last year, was a big learning year for him, and so my hope is that he has a great off season. He's able to spend, he understands what we're doing defensively, and so he's less concerned about learning the defense, and he's able to just go cut it loose and go play. And I think that's what I'm looking to see. Now, it's going to be a while before we can actually see that happen. You're not seeing it, really as you go through OTAs and minicamp. But I think that's just part of the process. But I really want to see him kind of cut it loose.
Do you guys feel good with Howden in that spot next to Tyron, or is that maybe still a need or something that you're?
Well, look, I think it's still going to be something that we're going to be looking at. I think, when you really look at, Tyron Matthew is kind of the proven commodity back there. And then, look, we just brought Jonathan Abram back. Howden was a young player that we felt like did some good things. And yet, I don't think any of us are ready to just hand the position over to him. I think that's something that's got to be earned.
Do you see Willie Gay as primary kind of in that Zach Bond role, or is he maybe I know you can use him a bunch of different
Well, look, I think he's a guy that's going to be competing to be a starter on our defense. And so I think that, with bringing him on board, you have Willie, you have DeMario, you have Pete Warner. Those are three guys that I know, have played a lot of football in our league and played at a high level in our league. And I think that gives us a little bit more depth, and it gives us some more options and things that we can do.
He was very vocal of I want more playing time. Yeah. But you actually kind of look at his snaps. He played a lot in Kansas City. I guess, did you kind of like that urgency from him of wanting to earn it?
Here's what I really appreciated was, there was no expectation on his part that he's going to be coming in here and handed a job. And yet there's no expectation that he's just going to come in and be a backup necessarily either. So, he's excited about the opportunity to come in and compete. He wants that opportunity, and we're going to give him the opportunity. And look, that stuff will play out, throughout the course of, OTAs, mini camp, training camp, preseason games. And then we'll evaluate where we're at. And the cool thing is if we got enough good football players, we'll find ways to utilize them and get them active and get them, being productive for us.
Along those same lines, like when you talk about the opportunity to compete, is this offseason kind of set up for Jake Haynard or maybe seize that backup job behind Derek?
Yeah, well, look, I think as we sit here right now, we let him and Nate Peterman go battle it out and see where we're at. But look, he's another one of these young guys that we felt good about, throughout the, preseason last year. Will be, obviously with the new offensive system, everybody's going to be learning, so everybody's going to kind of be starting, at the same level. And so, yeah, we're excited about watching him go out and compete and see what he can do, and yeah, we'll see.
How do you guys view Nick Salaberry just coming into year 2?
Golly, I feel like I keep repeating myself, with the same stuff, because here's another young guy that we feel optimistic about, but we really don't know a lot about. And so, but we're anxious to see him get out there and get to work and see what he can do. I mean, look, when we drafted him as a kid that we could bring in, develop, and ultimately our vision would have been for him to develop into a starting guard. And so we'll see how quickly we can make that vision come to life.
How well has this team kind of weathered what you knew would be a tough month before free agency, getting under the cap, in terms of just what you had to lose versus what you thought you might have lost in this process?
Yeah, look, I like where we're at as a football team right now. I certainly feel like there's some things that we still need to address, and yet we got plenty of time to do that, and plenty of avenues to do that. With the draft coming up, in about a month here, I think there's some things that we can address through the draft. There's always going to be another wave of guys that become available through free agency, after the draft, really all the way up and into training camp. There's avenues that we can utilize to, fill some spots in the roster. So I think Mickey, Kai, those guys, they do a great job managing the cap. Certainly the cap going up like it did this year helped us. But it went up the same for everybody, so everybody got the same benefits. So, yeah, we're just, we're in that stage of the off season where you're continuing to try to, add some personnel pieces to your team to try to see if you can improve.
For Cedric Wilson, do you think, I know he can play on the outside and on the inside, but do you see one as maybe more advantageous for him?
No, not necessarily. Look, I think the cool thing about, this offense is all these guys can play in all the different positions. When you think about, the receiver position, typically you've got, hey, here's our Z, here's our X, here's our F. And as you put them on and you draw the diagrams, the Z goes to the tight end side, the X goes to the open side, and the F goes in the slot. And yet, those positions can line up anywhere on the field, and I think that's what's going to be cool about this offseason is just watching, how we can put those guys in different positions and how we can utilize all those guys in different ways.
Tyron went on that recruiting dinner with Chase Young with you guys. Is that something you guys normally do? Do you normally bring a player to one of those?
Yeah. I would say it probably doesn't happen every time, but I thought, and we thought that, we thought this was a unique situation, and I think nobody sells our program better than our players. and in particular guys that have been to a couple of different spots. Because when you've only been in one spot, you only know how it's done in one place. But when you've been in a few different organizations and seen it done a couple of different ways, well, you certainly understand how good you have it when you're here. And so, yeah, and I thought Tyron was great in that environment. It wasn't like this big rah-rah, type of, deal. It was kind of, real professional and to the point, and I thought he did a good job for us.
Kind of, as you go through the pre-draft process, have you seen any effects from NIL as far as dealing with players or the experience with the season?
Well, I don't know that I've necessarily seen, anything overly unique in that I can tie directly to, NIL. I certainly think that, there's some differences that I'm seeing right now in terms of, guys that are choosing not to work out at the combine, choosing not to do some of the things at the combine, or not working out at their pro days. I don't know if I can tie that directly to NIL, but I certainly think there's a little bit more of that showing up now.
And just working with Clinton on just for a few weeks now, what's kind of stood out just about that staff and how's that process going so far?
Yeah, look, I think really kind of the attention to detail, and yet we haven't started working with the players at all, but I just think just really the attention to detail and everything that they're doing in terms of, how we want to be able to, install the offense, exactly what we want to do, what are the techniques that we're going to use to teach. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I'm noticing. And look, we'll kind of refine the process as we go along. But I'm kind of anxious to, get the players in, get an opportunity to start meeting with them, and see how they take to the new staff. And really no different than when you bring players into your building. You don't really know exactly what you have until you really start working with them. So I'm anxious to watch these guys coach, and see, what their personalities are as they start working with our players.
It seems like over the last couple of years, you guys have done a really good job of bringing in like cheaper league minimum players and getting them to contribute and play well. Just what's kind of been behind the success of that for you guys?
I think that's what coaching's really about. I think when you have great players, look, they all want to be coached and they all want to be held accountable. But great players sometimes can make plays that, you're not really coaching how to do that, and so it's finding guys later in the draft. It's finding guys that, are lower level from a financial standpoint, through free agency, and finding guys that you think fit the things that you want to be able to do, and then our ability to go and coach them and develop them within our scheme. And I think that's what coaching's all about.
Was Cam Jordan's ankle injury something or is Cam Jordan's ankle surgery something that would keep him out of the spring, or do you think by the time OTA is coming around?
No, I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to keep him out of the spring. I do think this. I do think when you have a guy like Cam who's getting a little older, how much do we do with him in spring? How much do we do with him in training camp? I think those are all, things that you kind of take into account when you're dealing with, a more veteran player.
You mentioned before that you kind of talked to Derek a little bit on the process with bringing Glenn on. What do you think he's going to benefit the most in this offense going into year two?
Yeah, look, I think, the interesting thing is David played for Gary in Houston, and when I talked to Derek initially, and said, "Hey, look, this is something I'm looking at." He called his brother, and I was a little nervous that it might not be the, because that was David's last year in Houston. But David was very complimentary of Gary and very complimentary of the scheme, which I think really got Derek excited. But I think Derek probably doesn't get enough credit for the athlete that he is, and I think his athletic skill set will do well in this scheme. I think some of the things that we did kind of later on in the season last year with some of the play action passing game benefited Derek. I thought our passing game kind of came alive a little bit towards the end of the year, and I think that's something that he'll thrive in this new system, new scheme.
What's the importance of the tight end in the scheme, or does that maybe change from place to place, or is it essential to kind of have that two-way type player?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think having some versatility is what I really think is important in this. Really, not just this offensive scheme, but really any offensive scheme. And so, tight ends that can block in the running game, obviously, are important pieces in what we want to try to be able to do. But also guys that can get open and affect the game in the passing game. And so, I think I don't know that I would say, okay, this offensive scheme, the tight end is more important or less important. But I think having some versatility, I think is something that we're looking for.
Coach, I know that you've been asked this, and I apologize, but can you tell me a little about Ronald Curry and what the Bills are getting in a coach?
Yeah, look, I mean, they're getting a guy that's going to come in and work hard, and he's got experience with Joe Brady, so I think that's kind of cool. He's smart. He has great demeanor with the players. I think he's going to do a great job coming in there. He's going to provide a lot of leadership for that room.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just what do you hope that John Bentley is going to be able to do with the offensive line, with the part of bringing them on?
Yeah, well, I think really him and Rico together. I think the scheme's going to benefit. Our guys up front. But yeah, I think, and I think there's a demeanor to the way in which we want to play offense, and there's going to be a physicality with which we're going to, have our guys playing, and I think it's going to be cool to see.
Darius Sneed went for a third-round pick a few years ago. Ryan Ramczyk went for a third. It seems low from the outside, at least from our perspective. Has the league's evaluation on cornerback, or at least trading for them, kind of changed the last few years here, or?
Well, look, I can't speak for the league.
Sure.
I know the way that we play defense. That's a position that's highly valued, and so that's a hard question because I can't talk for the league. I know that we value that position, and I know how that affects our ability to play defense the way that we want to be able to play defense. So,
Do you feel pretty good about Ryan Ramczyk's, availability and recovery?
Yeah, I think it still remains to be seen. You know what I mean? I don't feel. At the combine a few weeks ago, I was feeling a lot better about it, and yet I don't know that I'm seeing as much progress as I was hoping to see, at this point. So I think that still kind of remains to be seen. But here's the cool thing: we got plenty of time. no different than what we were talking about with Cam and being a veteran player and probably not utilizing necessarily a lot during this OTA and mini camp. I would see the same thing, with Ram too. So I think we're just going to have to wait and see how that all goes as we go through, all the off season and as we get into the training camp aspect.
Is that something that could be a concern, maybe going into the season then?
Yeah, I think it could be. But again, we'll just have to kind of wait and see.
Is that, did he just not respond to that surgery as well as you guys had hoped, or what caused you to change a little bit?
Well, I think more of it's just been visiting with him, and he just isn't quite where I was probably hoping he'd be, and really, quite frankly, where he was hoping he'd be. So, but again, there's a long time before we kick the ball off, so I wouldn't jump to any conclusions right now. But we'll see how it goes over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months, whatever that is, before we get to the season.
Do you potentially need another procedure, or?
I don't know that. That's not been something that we've really discussed.
I'm out of bullets.
You out of bullets?
We haven't asked technically.
You asked them all yesterday.
Technically, we asked you about Marshawn at the combine. Anything different there, or do you have any more clarity about whether he might be on? I know he's under contract and everything.
Yeah, no, look, really nothing new to add there. I mean, Lat's on our football team. He's a hell of a football player. I'm excited about what I think he can do for us. The key for him, really, just like anybody, is can we get him in here and keep him healthy for an entire season? And I think that's what our focus is right now.
For the DN spots, Granderson's been a starter, Jordan's been a starter, Chase Young's been a starter. Do you see a competition unfolding there for those starting spots, or do you kind of have an idea in mind of
Well, look, I think as with any position we have, on our team, I think guys are going to have to go out there and earn it. So I'm excited about watching how this thing plays out, and it's a good problem to have, having guys that have played at a high level and performed and been productive in our league. Having guys that have been able to do that on your team, I think, is a good problem to have.
For Chase too, sometimes you would hear some criticisms of there was this play in the NFC Championship game where he did Gibbs on the backside, the effort. How often does that show on film, or is that something you would like to see more corrected, or is that going to be a focus point for him here?
I would say it's never been really an issue on our defense, and so I wouldn't expect that to be an issue now. So our guys, all of our guys they're going to play hard. They're going to play the game the right way, and look, obviously we brought Chase in here because I think he fits the culture of what we want to do defensively, and so I'm excited about getting the opportunity to work with him.
Oh, one last one for me, since you brought in culture, but we talked. You mentioned even with Willie Gay earlier about the locker room. Do you feel like the guys that you brought in this offseason have gone kind of toward the things you talked about at the end of last season of improving the culture?
Yeah, I do. I think that's been something that we've really looked to. I think, and Mickey and I have talked about this a lot. Everybody wants to win, and everybody's willing to do a lot of things to win. But are you really willing to do everything it takes to win? And so I think that's something that as we brought guys into our program, that's something that we look for. All right? All good? Okay. Appreciate it, guys.